Picture this for a moment. 23 years ago, a company barely had the money to keep its lights on. It survived on government scraps. Engineers slept on factory floors. Rockets blew up on the launch pad one after another, and the founder later admitted he was one failure away from bankruptcy. That company was SpaceX. Today, that same company is on track to outturn NASA itself, not match it, outturn it, the entire space agency of the United States of America. How does something like that even happen? The answer is simpler than you'd think, and it's the same answer that explains why a brand new company just 4 years old is now quietly positioning itself to do the exact same thing. It comes down to one idea: don't put your eggs in one basket. SpaceX never relied on just one thing. They took government contracts, they launched commercial satellites for private companies, they built Starlink and beamed internet down from orbit, they started signing defense deals, they began dreaming about tourism, they worked on point-to-point travel that could take you from New York to Tokyo in under an hour. Every stream of money fed the next dream. Starlink paid for Starship, government contracts paid for engineers, commercial launches paid for the factories. It became a machine that funded itself. And now somebody else has been watching very, very carefully. Her name keeps coming up in defense briefings these days. Engineers in Colorado talk about her in hushed tones. NASA officials nod when her name is mentioned in meetings. Sierra Space. She's only 4 years old, a baby in this industry, but she's already done something that most companies take decades to achieve. She's built a spaceplane. Not a capsule, not a rocket, a spaceplane. They call her Dream Chaser. Now, before we go further, you have to understand something about the rocket business. It's brutal. I mean it, genuinely soul-crushingly brutal. Imagine spending 2 years of your life building something. Imagine pouring millions of dollars into it. Imagine the engineers, the late nights, the coffee cups stacking up on desks, the marriages strained, the children who barely saw their parents. And then on launch day, one tiny valve fails. One tiny valve. And everything you built turns into a fireball in the sky. Investors watch from their boardrooms, faces pale. The news headlines write themselves. Stock prices crash. That's rocketry. The temperatures inside a rocket engine are hotter than the surface of the sun. The materials have to survive conditions that don't exist anywhere on Earth. The vibrations alone can shake a component to pieces in seconds. And space itself is a vacuum that wants to kill you every single second. This is the business Sierra Space chose to enter, and not just enter but try to dominate. Let me tell you what makes Dream Chaser different. When SpaceX brings their astronauts home, the capsule splashes into the ocean. A boat goes out to fetch them. The capsule needs cleaning, refurbishment, transport. When Dream Chaser comes home, she lands on a runway. Like an airplane, any airport with a long enough runway anywhere in the world can receive her. Think about what that means for a moment. A pharmaceutical company is conducting an experiment in space. Protein crystals growing in zero gravity, the kind of research that might one day cure cancer. The experiment is finished. Time is critical. Those samples need to be in a laboratory within hours, not days. Dream Chaser lands at the airport closest to that laboratory. A truck drives the samples down the road. Lives are saved. That's the vision. She's not picky about her ride to space either. Most spacecraft are married to one specific rocket. If that rocket has a problem, the spacecraft sits and waits. Dream Chaser doesn't care. She can sit on top of multiple different rockets. Whichever one is ready, she'll fly. She doesn't burn toxic fuels either. Some spacecraft use propellants so dangerous that ground crews wear hazmat suits for hours just to approach them after landing. Dream Chaser uses something cleaner, friendlier. She can land at a regular airport without poisoning the runway. And here's the part that the military finds especially interesting. If something goes wrong during launch, if the rocket beneath her starts to fail, Dream Chaser doesn't need a human being to save her. She can detach herself, glide away from danger, find the nearest suitable runway and land. All on her own. No ground controllers, no pilot, just pure machine intelligence. That kind of capability is priceless when you're talking about military operations. But this is where the story gets really interesting. Earlier this year in a quiet building in Centennial, Colorado, Sierra Space opened up a brand new facility. They called it Victory Works. 60,000 square feet of cleanrooms and assembly bays. The purpose? Building satellites for the United States Space Force, satellites that will form part of America's missile warning system, satellites that will be the eyes that spot an incoming threat before it reaches American soil. The contract attached to this work, $1.5 billion. Then came another contract, $740 million, 18 more satellites. These ones carrying next-generation fire control sensors, the kind of technology that doesn't just spot a missile but tracks it, predicts its path and helps shoot it down. This is the same playbook SpaceX ran. Civil work to build credibility, commercial work to bring in revenue, and then, when nobody's looking, slide quietly into defense and become indispensable to the Pentagon. There's more. NASA wants to put humans back on the moon, not just for a quick visit but to stay, to build a base, to live there. And Sierra Space has been working on something they call Life. It's an inflatable space habitat, compact when launched, enormous when expanded, like a tent for outer space. The idea is to use these habitats as part of the lunar infrastructure, storage, cargo holds, tunnel networks connecting different parts of a moon base, the bones of humanity's first permanent home off-world. This isn't science fiction anymore. The contracts are signed, the engineers are working, the metal is being cut. So why haven't we seen Dreamchaser fly yet? That's the question every space fan asks, and it's a fair one. Back in 2020, an executive at the company stood in front of cameras and confidently announced that Dreamchaser would be flying by 2021. It's now well past that date, she still hasn't flown. The first spaceplane has a name, they call her Tenacity, a fitting name considering how much patience everyone involved has needed. Tenacity is currently sitting in a NASA facility going through her final tests. The new target is later this year, but honestly, nobody is making promises anymore. The delays haven't been because of Dreamchaser herself, she's ready. The problem has been finding her a ride. She was supposed to fly on top of a brand new rocket called Vulcan Centaur, but that rocket had to prove itself first by carrying military payloads. Dreamchaser got bumped, then bumped again. There was talk of using an older, more reliable rocket called Atlas V, but production of that rocket has ended. Only a handful remain and every single one of them is already promised to other missions. Boeing's Starliner needs them, government missions need them, the line is long and Dreamchaser is at the back. And then there are the engineering challenges. When you build a spaceplane that lands on a runway, you need landing gear. And that landing gear has to come out at exactly the right moment. Not a second too early, not a second too late. The old space shuttle had the same problem. Let me tell you a story about the shuttle that not many people know. The shuttle's landing gear could only be deployed manually. There was no backup, no automatic system to save you if the pilot was incapacitated. The gear sat behind doors in the heat shield, and if those doors opened too early during re-entry, the superheated plasma would tear the orbiter apart. So the astronauts had to wait through the fire, wait through the descent, and then at exactly the right moment push the button. If the gear didn't come down, there was no second chance. The shuttle couldn't survive a belly landing. The structure simply wasn't designed for it. If the cargo bay was full, the payload would slide forward on impact and crush the crew compartment. Every shuttle landing was a moment where hundreds of engineers held their breath. Sierra Space is now trying to take that legacy of engineering and update it for a new era, make it safer, make it more reliable, add the backup systems that the shuttle never had. That kind of work takes time. You don't rush something that has human lives riding on it. So what does the future hold? Nobody knows for certain, but the pieces are all there. A spaceplane that can land on any runway in the world, a defense business growing faster than anyone predicted, a lunar habitat program that's part of humanity's return to the moon, pharmaceutical experiments that could change medicine forever, military contracts worth billions. The same diversification strategy that turned SpaceX from a scrappy startup into the most valuable private company on Earth. is now being executed by a 4-year-old company in Colorado. Will Dream Chaser actually fly this year? Maybe, maybe not. But the company behind her isn't waiting around for that first flight to start changing the industry. They're already changing it. And somewhere in a quiet office in Texas, someone at SpaceX is probably watching very, very carefully. Because the student is starting to look an awful lot like the teacher. What do you think? Is Dream Chaser the future of spaceflight or just another beautiful machine that takes too long to leave the ground? Share your thoughts below. I genuinely want to hear what you think. If this story moved you, give it a like, subscribe if you're new here, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. The cosmos is waiting, let's keep exploring it together.